Sophia sat in the quiet stillness of her lavish living room, the ticking of the antique clock on the wall echoing louder than her own thoughts. To anyone looking from the outside, her life was perfect. She lived in a house that most could only dream of, with a husband who appeared attentive, and a future that seemed secure. But deep within her, doubt had begun to coil itself around her heart, tightening each day. The laughter between her and Daniel had grown scarce, his late nights away from their bedroom had grown longer, and whispers from her so-called friends played on repeat in her mind. Be careful, Sophia. Men like him don't stay faithful forever, especially with a pretty maid around. At first, she brushed it off with a confident smile, but insecurity is a seed that once planted, grows quickly when watered with silence and suspicion. That night, unable to rest, Sophia made a decision that she never thought she would make. With shaky hands, she retrieved a small hidden camera she had purchased weeks ago, something she had promised herself she would never use. Yet here she was, carefully setting it up in the corner of the living room, where she suspected Elena, their maid, often lingered after finishing her chores. Sophia's heart pounded as she adjusted the angle, praying she was wrong, but convinced that soon she would know the truth. When she finally crawled into bed beside Daniel, who was already asleep, she stared at the ceiling with eyes wide open, torn between dread and relief at what tomorrow might bring. Morning arrived heavy with anticipation. Sophia waited until Daniel left for work and Elena began her chores. Only then did she rush to the camera, her palms sweaty as she fumbled to connect it to her laptop. She told herself she was prepared for betrayal, but nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to witness. The screen lit up with grainy footage of the previous night. Sophia leaned in, her breath caught in her throat, ready for the worst. The video showed Daniel entering the living room quietly after midnight. Sophia's heart thudded painfully as she saw Elena seated on the couch, her face buried in her hands, shoulders trembling. Sophia blinked, confusion flickering across her features. This wasn't flirtation or intimacy. This was pain. Elena's soft sobs filled the silent room, and Sophia found herself instinctively holding her breath. Daniel sat down beside Elena, not close enough to be inappropriate, but near enough to show comfort. His voice was low, steady, almost fatherly. Tell me what's wrong, he urged gently. Elena lifted her tear-streaked face, and even through the shaky footage, Sophia could see the anguish etched into the young maid's expression. My mother, Elena's voice cracked. She's very sick back home. I've been sending all my pay for her medicine, but it's not enough. I don't know what else to do. I feel like I'm failing her. Sophia's chest tightened. She had always seen Elena as quiet and diligent, but she had never taken the time to ask about her life beyond the house. Watching her now, vulnerable and heartbroken, Sophia realized how little she knew of the girl who cleaned her floors and folded her laundry. Daniel reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. He pressed it into Elena's trembling hands. Here, he whispered firmly. Take this. It should help for now. Elena shook her head, refusing at first. No, sir, I can't accept this, Mrs. Sophia. She would think. Don't tell her, Daniel interrupted softly. This isn't about me or her. It's about your mother. She needs help, and you don't have time to argue with pride. Sophia's lips parted in shock. Her husband's tone was tender, but not romantic. There was no betrayal in his eyes, only compassion. Elena clutched the envelope with trembling fingers before breaking down again, sobbing into her hands. Daniel placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, but nothing more. No lingering touch, no hidden affair. Only kindness. Sophia's tears blurred the footage as she sat frozen before the laptop. All the nights of doubt, the sleepless hours, the bitterness she had allowed to seep into her marriage, it all felt so heavy, so misguided. She had prepared herself to witness destruction, to find proof of disloyalty, but instead she found something far more piercing, truth. And it was a truth that shattered her assumptions. Daniel hadn't been sneaking around with Elena. He had been carrying a secret burden of compassion, trying to protect Sophia from worry and protect Elena from shame. He had chosen silence, believing it was the safer path, but in doing so, he had created a wall between himself and his wife. Sophia closed the laptop slowly, her hands trembling as tears spilled freely down her cheeks. She had been searching for betrayal, yet what she uncovered was an act of quiet generosity. But it wasn't just Daniel's compassion that struck her. It was Alina's desperation, her hidden struggles, her silent fight to keep her family alive across oceans. Sophia felt her world tilt, her perspective shifting in ways she hadn't anticipated. All at once, she felt small in her grand home, guilty in her comfort, and humbled by the realization that while she had been chasing shadows of jealousy, others were battling real demons of survival. Her heart ached with a strange mix of relief and sorrow. Relief that Daniel hadn't betrayed her, sorrow that she had doubted him, and a deeper sorrow that she had never thought to look at Elena as more than an employee. As the morning sun streamed through the windows, Sophia wiped her tears and stared at her reflection in the glossy black of the laptop screen. She no longer saw a suspicious wife or a betrayed woman. She saw someone who had been blind to the quiet struggles around her, someone who had the power to change that. What she had expected to break her heart had instead awakened it. And in that moment, Sophia knew her life, and her marriage, would never be the same again. That evening, the grand chandelier above the dining table cast golden light across the room, but Sophia's heart felt heavier than ever. The silence between her and Daniel as they ate was unbearable. He glanced at her occasionally, his brow furrowed as though he sensed the storm brewing inside her. Elena moved quietly around the dining area, setting down dishes with lowered eyes, unaware that Sophia knew everything. Each clink of porcelain against the table made Sophia's pulse quicken, until finally, she could no longer hold the weight of her discovery. "Daniel," she said softly, her voice trembling despite her attempt to sound steady. He looked up immediately, concern flashing in his eyes. "We need to talk." Elena froze mid-step, her hands gripping the edge of a tray. The unease in the air was thick, almost suffocating. Sophia turned to the maid, her voice gentler now. "Elena, please, sit down. I need to speak with both of you." The young woman's eyes widened, panic filling her expression. She stammered, "Ma'am, I didn't." Sophia raised a hand, stopping her. "Please, just sit." Elena sank into the nearest chair, her head bowed in shame. Daniel set down his fork, his face tight with unease. "Sophia, what is this about?" Her chest heaved as she gathered the courage to speak. "I know," she whispered. "About last night. About the money. About Elena's mother." The silence that followed was deafening. Elena gasped, covering her face with her hands as tears spilled down her cheeks. Daniel closed his eyes briefly, as if a heavy secret had been torn from his grasp. Sophia's voice cracked, but she pressed on. "Why didn't you tell me, Daniel? Why did you hide this from me? Did you think I wouldn't care?" Daniel's eyes met hers, filled not with guilt of infidelity but with a quiet sorrow. "I didn't want to burden you," he said softly. "You've already had so much on your plate. And I didn't want Elena to feel ashamed or exposed. I thought it would be easier to handle it quietly." Elena broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm so sorry, ma'am. I never wanted you to find out this way. I was ashamed of my situation. You've been so kind to me already, and I didn't want to look like I was asking for more. I just didn't know what else to do." Sophia felt her own tears well up again, but this time they weren't from suspicion or fear, they were from compassion. She reached across the table and gently took Elena's trembling hand in hers. "You should never have felt you had to hide your pain," she whispered. "You've carried this burden alone for too long. And Daniel, I wish you hadn't underestimated me. I may be your wife, but I'm also a woman who can help, who wants to help. Don't protect me from compassion. It's the very thing that gives my life meaning." Elena lifted her head, her tear-streaked face glowing with disbelief. "Ma'am, you mean you would?" "Yes," Sophia interrupted firmly. "We will take care of your mother's treatment. Not just with a little cash to get by, but fully. She deserves a chance to heal, and you deserve peace of mind." Elena's sobs grew louder, but they were different now, soaked with gratitude rather than despair. She clasped Sophia's hands tightly, as though clinging to a lifeline she thought she'd never find. Daniel, watching the two women, felt his own heart swell with pride and relief. For the first time in months, he looked at Sophia with admiration that went beyond love. It was respect, awe at the strength of her compassion. Sophia wiped Elena's tears with the corner of her napkin, just as she would a younger sister. "You're not alone anymore, Elena. You're part of this family. We will face this together." Daniel reached across the table and placed his hand gently over both of theirs. Sophia, I should have trusted you. You've just reminded me why I fell in love with you in the first place. For a long moment, the three of them sat together, hands linked, chairs glistening under the chandelier's golden glow. What had begun as suspicion and fear had turned into a moment of truth, where walls were broken and hearts laid bare. Later that night, after Elena had gone to her room, Daniel pulled Sophia close. His voice was quiet but full of emotion. I was so afraid this would break us. I thought you'd see my actions and misunderstand. But instead, you've turned it into something beautiful. Sophia rested her head on his chest, her heart lighter than it had been in weeks. I was ready to see betrayal, she admitted, but instead I saw kindness. And I almost let my fear blind me to what really matters. But tonight taught me something, Daniel. Real love isn't about guarding ourselves from pain, it's about opening our hearts to share it. He kissed her forehead, holding her as though he never wanted to let go. You've given me more than I deserve, he murmured. Days later, arrangements were made for Elena's mother's treatment. Sophia personally called doctors, organized finances, and assured Elena that everything would be handled. Elena's gratitude was overwhelming. She often tried to thank Sophia with words, but Sophia always stopped her with a smile. Don't thank me, she would say. Just promise me that one day, when you see someone else in need, you'll do the same for them. The house that once felt divided by suspicion now thrummed with a new sense of unity. Sophia realized she no longer needed to hide cameras or chase whispers. Her strength came from trust, not fear. And Daniel, seeing his wife's selflessness, fell in love with her all over again, not for her beauty or wealth, but for the size of her heart. Sophia's world had indeed been shattered, but not in the way she expected. It shattered open, breaking away the walls of mistrust and replacing them with a deeper truth. That kindness, when shared, transforms not just one life, but everyone it touches. What could have been the end of her marriage became instead the rebirth of it, grounded in compassion, honesty, and the unshakable belief that love's greatest strength is its ability to heal.